Ask Reddit.
When did your something is very wrong here gut instinct turn out to be right?
I had a bad feeling about my aunt's boyfriend. Told my mom he seemed creepy and I didn't want to stay the night there anymore. I got a bit of a lecture for calling him creepy, but she made sure I was never around him alone. And good thing he turned out to be a child molester who is currently in jail for his involvement in a kiddie porn ring.
I feel like people should be more inclined to take their kids seriously, especially if the kid is scared or finds someone threatening or creepy. No, they might not just be being silly, perhaps they're more attuned to recognizing safe versus unsafe people. Yeah, but then they say stuff like I don't want to go to Texas, that's where the bad guys are, or there aren't dragons because I peed in the toilet, and you realize you have to really take what they say with a grain of salt. It's one of the hardest things about parenting besides having to punish them and giving them baths.
Or like the other day I asked me boy 5 times if he wanted chicken nuggets before we went through the drive-thru. Each time no nuggets. And he shook his head. As soon as I pulled away. Nuggets. Lucky I knew him well enough and I passed them to him. I had creepy feelings about my mom's boss, a psychiatrist. He and his wife were also my parents' friends and they saw each other socially. I was told off for constantly saying how much I disliked him. Something in me just couldn't stop saying it until my mom snapped and told me off quite sternly, telling me I didn't really know him like she did. He was a kind, generous and truly lovely boss and friend, and I should stop being so nasty. It was just a gut feeling and seemingly trivial incidents. For instance, I remember being left alone with him in a lounge room at one social occasion, when everyone else happened to be out the room momentarily attending to food, chatting in another room or whatever. It was like as soon as the adults left the room he could stop acting warm and gregarious and normal. He totally ignored me like I was a piece of the furniture. Most adults in that situation would have made chit-chat with the kid. So, how's school been then, Marmalady? Nope, he just took the moment to drop the act. His face, moments before warm and jovial, was suddenly somehow very dark and ugly. Little did he know that little girl was watching him closely without his mask on and glimpsed something of his true nature. A few years later, rape accusations came out from his former patient's young boys at the time. These he vehemently denied. My mom actually organized a fundraiser of local doctors to help him with his legal fees and show support. I don't know. Pretty damn weird really, but it shows how fooled she and everyone else in the community were by this wonderful man. But she soon started to feel pretty sick when one of the former patients killed himself, when his claims were disputed and even more former patients emerged out of the woodwork. He was eventually found guilty of multiple counts of indecent assault, can't remember the exact legal term, of many young boys in his so-called care. Total, utter evil psychopath. Trust the gut, it can pick up cues the mind is too slow to fathom. Was it Blink by Malcolm Gladwell that espoused this theory? TLDR had bad feelings about my mom's boss and friend. He turned out to be a psychopathic pedophile. Did you and your mom had I told you so moment after she realized that accusations were true, or did she pretended that you never told her how creepy that guy is? No. She felt absolutely terrible, guilty and publicly humiliated in a way that went way beyond our little I told you so moment. It did add a little more weight to the reputation I subsequently developed in the family, for having good intuition. Their kid could see what a whole town of his colleagues and his friends, and his loyal practice manager of 10 years, mom, could not.
Was it just that one incident where you saw him drop his mask? It seems like you already knew something was off even before a moment like that, or had you seen it before? It must have been such a crazy thing to see all that come out and confirm your suspicions. I wonder if you would have known had he not let his guard down around you like that?
Yes, I wonder also. Before the drop the mask incident he was just someone I didn't really get what my parents saw in, but didn't let it bother me. Kids are simply just not so impressed by surface stuff like fancy jobs and cars etc. and are better BS detectors. In the same way, dogs or horses sense when someone's inner outer selves don't line up I guess. After I saw him drop his mask I still couldn't have analyzed what was happening there and wouldn't have articulated his incongruence like that. I just knew my casual dislike of him turned into a red alert dislike of him, and this came out as a repeated I just really don't like him, Mom. I really don't like him. And I suppose she got fed up with my inability to give any concrete reason. In a way she was right, I didn't know what I was talking about. I felt it. It simply felt really weird and icky and off being around him. Yes, it was very validating for me when the truth emerged. It helped me have more confidence to trust my instincts in other situations later. But mostly I just felt shocked at how my bad feelings were just the tip of a much more horrifying iceberg of evil. I hesitate to use that word because I'm not religious, but yeah, extreme abuse and cruelty without remorse than any of us could ever have imagined. Those poor already hurting boys entrusted to his care. Far out. My freshman year, my math class had a substitute teacher who we all agreed was really weird and creepy. He really only talked to the girls and made inappropriate comments. For context, this man was easily in his 60s. Well, when our teacher come back the next week we complained to him about the sub and talked crap about him being a creeper. The teacher was very upset. He said, "I will not stand sub being disrespected like this. I have known this man for a decade, and he is a kind good man who would never do anything to a student or any person." 1 week later sub was caught, in the middle of the night, breaking and entering a college girl's apartment, and I believe trying to sexually assault her or doing some other perverse thing. Teacher came in the next day and apologized. Edit. He was only charged with residential burglary, a felony, but it was a woman's home, at night.
That was pretty cool of the teacher to apologize. He could have just ignored it and not said anything. Seems like a lot of adults automatically discount what kids say just cause they're kids. It's something for me to keep in mind as an adult who has kid family members. I specifically remember not being taken seriously when I was a kid about something and saying in my head, never forget how it feels to be a kid, in the sense that sure you might think you're older and try to act it, but there are levels of maturity and instinct afforded to children that we forget existed as we become the jaded, disillusioned cog in the machine called adulthood. Driving with a friend of mine through a pretty remote forest road. Couple of guys in the middle of nowhere tried flagging us down. I almost stopped for them before an alarm went off in my head and I stepped on the gas. My friend started saying what the foo. And at the same time there was a shot and a bullet hit the back of the car. We made it to a police station. Turns out there had been a bunch of people and vehicles going missing in the area that same week. I live in Egypt. General rule is if someone tries to force you to stop, especially in a remote area, run them over. 15 minutes after arriving in Egypt I was in a taxi roaring through desert roads, sketchy taxi, sketchy roads. A tourist on holiday. Suddenly 2 cars blocked the road ahead and ununiformed guys with AK-47s flagged down the taxi. Can confirm it's a shit your pants moment. We had to stop, they flashed police badges and demanded my passport. After sitting for like 10 minutes they gave it back and let us go on our way. No communication. No explanation. Great holiday. I have one of those right next to where I live. It's not necessarily bad, just because there were a lot of carjacks and kidnappings there, so this solves that. You just said the rule is to run over people who do that. Egypt is not for beginners, you have to feel it. I love my stepsister to pieces, but she is way too trusting with people she doesn't know well. About 10 years ago she was living with a couple of roommates who became her best friends. She would tell me stories about them over the phone. We lived in different cities and I would just think, Jesus Christ, these girls are messes. She could hear the wariness in my voice after telling me stories about their troubled lives and how they're really good people who have just been through a lot. I didn't buy it. I can't think of all the stories because it's been too long, but they were always sketchy as hell. Cut to my stepsister inheriting $20,000 from a deceased relative. She was young and super excited about it, and I knew she probably didn't keep the new money a secret. About 1 fucking week later, one of her roommates calls her panicking, saying that this guy who she's been talking to online kidnapped her and was holding her for ransom. A $15,000 ransom. And she called my stepsister for the ransom. Not her parents. Her fucking roommate. She calls me, freaking out because she didn't know what to do. I asked her if she had told her roommate about the money. Of course she did. Move out, sis. Fo. Those little girls who are really good people but have just been through a lot, yeah, they're liars. She reluctantly followed my advice and thankfully didn't try to make a deal with them. I told her to call the police, if I remember correctly she didn't. She still worries me sometimes. Your stepsister sounds like an idiot.